Hey guys, 2 Cents Rugby here. Quick season review. I'm going to do this for all the teams, but I'll start at the bottom. A quick season review on the Sunwolves season, how they went, some of the good things, the bad things, the highs and lowlights, and just a quick word on how they look going forward. So obviously they finished 15th, which is the wooden spoon, not ideal. Although year on year we are seeing the Sunwolves record slightly improve, although if on the table spot they actually finished above the Rebels last year, they finished last this time, but still 3 wins is an improvement for them. And in terms of points scored, they weren't the last team, they were 11th out of 15 teams, so it wasn't scoring points that was too big a problem. I'm not sure if I can count 11th as a good, but it's not terrible anyway. They were 5th overall at getting over the advantage line, so when they got the ball, they were able to move forward with it. They were 5th in taking pick and drive, so I think there was a style of their game that we noticed. When they got the ball, they were trying to move it quickly. They had their own reasons for doing that. Perhaps their set piece wasn't the best platform, but they were trying to just keep the ball alive as long as possible. They were 15th on penalties conceded, so giving away penalties wasn't a big issue for them. And they were number 1 in terms of their goal kicking. A lot of that's down to Hayden Parker. His boot was radar accurate pretty much all season. They were kicking at 89% overall, so number 1 spot in that department. That's the good stuff. The bad stuff is mostly related to their defense. So they were number 1 for points conceded with 664. The next worst was the Blues with 509, so it's 150 more points conceded, which is obviously not ideal. They were number 1 for turnovers conceded, 5th for missed tackles, 2nd for run meters conceded, 1st for line breaks conceded, actually first equal for red cards as well. They had 2 red cards during the season, and their line-out win percentage was 85, which put them in 11th, so a lot of that was down to the start of the season when their line-out just wasn't working at all. But yeah, line breaks were the real killer for them, and that was tied in with the run meters conceded. When people would bust the line, it would lead to some pretty bad results for the Sunwolves. So yeah, going forward, okay. Defensively, not so sound. The season, if you look at it in 2 halves, the first half of the season was pretty bad, 8 from 8 losses. Obviously, they went 9 in a row before they got a win. Second half of the season is 3 wins and 5 losses, so slightly more respectable. But obviously, they showed improvement throughout the season. Some of their guys were kind of standout performers as well. Michael Little, in the midfield, was having a good run. He was the 3rd guy for average tackle busts. He was busting 4.9 tackles a game, which was impressive. He was only behind Damian McKenzie and Akira Ioane. Hayden Parker with that radar boot of his was 5th on total points scored or average points scored. So they scored a few tries as well. And Jose Salmaki was averaging 100 run meters a game with the ball, so that's 4th overall. He's ahead of guys like Falau. So there were some standout players in that team. Although the team was kind of chopped and changed a fair bit as the season went on. They didn't pick up any away wins, which was still a feature of the game, although they did win in Singapore and in Hong Kong. So kind of half home, half away with those ones. The attendances generally looked pretty good, especially in Japan, although the fixtures in Hong Kong and Singapore also didn't seem to really draw a whole lot of fans in, although I do know a couple of guys who comment on this channel who attended those games. So there were people going, but yeah, not fantastic. Highlights, I would have to say, that 63-28 win over the Reds in Japan in Week 13 was probably their standout moment from the season. But there were some lowlights. Obviously, they lost 77-25 to the Waratahs when they had a red card. And their reaction to that red card wasn't good. The team pretty much fell to bits because the game was close, and once the red card happened, the floodgates just opened in that one. Also, they lost to the Chiefs 61-10 in Japan, which was pretty disappointing because although they'd been losing, they were kind of on a better run at that point. In terms of losses, which weren't that bad, they only lost to the Lions by 2 points in South Africa, so that was kind of encouraging. The Sunwolves as a team, get talked about as to their future and the reason they're kind of in the competition. A lot of people look to the money factor. Obviously, Japan being one of the better markets that they're trying to expand the game into. So there's a balance of trying to get them to succeed, but also improving Japanese rugby. So I had a look at what was the balance of kind of Japanese players to non-Japanese players playing for the team. We don't really care about that much for other teams, I must admit. Like for the New Zealand teams, nobody really cares how many imported players we've got. But generally for New Zealand, South Africa, and Australian teams, and the Jaguares, there's not really a whole lot of imports. Usually it's only a handful. But obviously for the Sunwolves, it's a fair bit more. So I looked at just total games. So each guy who played, whether he started or came off the bench, counted as one game. So there were 300 odd games in total. 55% of those games, each person playing a game registering as one, were registered by Japanese players. Whether they're Japanese born or guys who've moved to Japan and ended up playing for the national team, it doesn't matter. I'm just looking at guys who are eligible to play for Japan. 55% to 45% foreign players. I guess in terms of growing Japanese rugby, 55% is not too bad, because they are looking to grow the Japanese game. That's more than half, but also trying to look at getting a win. There is that kind of whole, why are we having so many mercenary players play for the team? Shouldn't we have more Japanese players? 55%. Obviously, it'd be nice if it was higher, but at least it's more than half. Salmaki I've had to count as a foreign player because he's still not cleared to play for Japan because he played for the Tongan Sevens team. So until that gets cleared up, he is still registered as foreign. So yeah, that was just an interesting little fact. Because, like I said, there's always that question about what is the future, what is the purpose of the Sunwolves. If it is to grow Japanese rugby, we need Japanese players playing. This would indicate there's a fair portion of them who are local players. In terms of the future, this is a big question for the Sunwolves because when you look, although there's not really one source of truth for this, but Wikipedia has a page about players contracted for 2019, and usually when it says a player is contracted to 2019 or going forward, it'll link to a news story. When you look at the Sunwolves page, although I admit it's Wikipedia, so you kind of take that with a grain of salt. Sunwolves page for 2019, players listed as contracted, looking for next season, none. That seems to be the thing with the Sunwolves. These guys are mostly playing in the top league, and they, at the end of the top league season, just kind of take on a year with the Sunwolves as, I guess, just a bit of extra rugby for whatever reasons, whether it's money, for some of the guys it is, and whether it's just for experience for some of the guys it will be. So that's a concern. Like every year they're going to have to build the Sunwolves team back up again, which makes it hard to coach, and it's hard to kind of build on where they're going to go in the future. So there are some positives. Obviously, having the national team coach coaching the Sunwolves would help as well, even if it was only 55% of the players who are eligible for his national team. Some of those guys who I mentioned as foreign may actually become eligible for Japan once they keep playing in Japan, but for the moment I've still got them as foreign. But yeah, what Sunwolves team is going to run onto the field next year, your guess is as good as mine because I couldn't see any players who were contracted on. So it's an interesting one. Hopefully for next season they can get their team organised a bit earlier because they are always kind of rushing to get things together as the guys finish the top league season. How they solve that problem, I'm not sure. Whether they can release some guys early from their clubs would be nice, but whether that can happen, kind of doubtful. But yeah, still some improvement. 3 wins. Second half of the season, 3 wins showed that there was some improvement after kind of a total dry spell in the first half. But yeah. I'll get to the other teams, including the Blues, in coming days. But that's the Sunwolves. You guys let me know your thoughts on the team and how you think their season went. And I'll talk to you again soon. All right. See you later.